With the arrival and proliferation of Tiberium and the rise of the Brotherhood of Nod, the United Nations formed the Global Defense Initiative. Its purpose was to maintain peace and stability around the world. To achieve this, GDI had to research methods to reduce and control the spread of Tiberium, and directly counter the Brotherhood of Nod, who continued to spread their ideology. Over a roughly 50-year period, GDI and the Brotherhood would engage in 3 major wars. GDI often found itself on the defensive at the start of these conflicts. Thus, the organization recognized the importance of investing in defensive systems to protect its territories and bases across the globe. During the First Tiberium War, both GDI and the Brotherhood made use of some passive base defenses, which included sandbags, chain-link fences, and concrete walls. Sandbags were used to deter the advance of enemy forces and provide limited cover for some units. Sandbags were quite weak as a defense, and could be easily destroyed by grenades, tank shells, or other explosives. On the upside, they were cheap and quick for a commander's troops to set up around their base. Chain-link fences, with barbed wire on top, functioned similar to sandbags, offering slightly more protection at a slightly higher cost. These fences could also be taken down with relative ease, either by explosive weapons or simply being run over by light and heavy armored vehicles. While more expensive than sandbags and fences, concrete walls were the ultimate defensive barrier a commander could construct around their base. These walls were tall, making it difficult for infantry to climb over them. They could not be run over by enemy vehicles, and could block direct attacks from enemies attempting to hit units or structures behind the walls. While direct assaults from explosive weapons would eventually bring down a wall, this took up the attacker's valuable time, and allowed the defender to rally his forces and repel the assault. Some vehicles, such as Nod's artillery tanks or GDI's MLRS, could fire shells and missiles over the walls, either negating their defensive capabilities, or allowing the defender to hit attackers on the outside. Both factions would sometimes place concrete gates between the walls for their own forces to enter and exit. For active base defense, GDI commanders utilized a couple of guard towers to hold off and repel attackers. The standard guard tower was an elevated platform with an observation post at the top. This post was surrounded by sandbags, had a metal roof covering the guard, and a searchlight inside. The guard stationed in the tower was armed with a high-velocity machine gun that was very effective at taking out infantry and some light vehicles. The tower could detect Nod stealth units within close proximity, and would remain operational if the base lost power. The advanced guard tower was, well, an advanced version of the standard tower. More specifically, this tower had improved armor thanks to its concrete and metal construction, and it featured an enclosed platform for observers. The tower had an antenna array for better detection of any nearby stealthed units, and to target approaching enemy forces with its long-range missile launchers. The tower typically fired a pair of guided missile salvos against an enemy unit. These were effective at taking out practically any units, from infantry to armored vehicles. These missiles could even target enemy aircraft, making this tower GDI's primary anti-air defense structure. There are a couple of issues with the advanced guard tower, though. The first is that the Tiberian Dawn manual states that it launches Tomahawk missiles, which doesn't seem to make sense given the number of missiles that are needed to take out a single Nod light tank. Of course, this could simply be a function of gameplay. Tomahawks are currently only launched from ships and submarines, though there have been tests to launch them from land-based systems. Even if GDI used a land-based Tomahawk launcher, there doesn't seem to be any indication of one on the advanced guard tower itself. The missiles just appear out of the tower and head toward their target. This same issue occurs with the advanced guard tower in Renegade too. This could be due to limitations with the game engine at the time, but my interpretation of the AGT's attacks was that there were a couple of guards stationed inside the tower, operating anti-tank rocket launchers such as the tow missile or Javelin. A modified version of the advanced guard tower was used later in the war. In addition to its missiles, the AGT was armed with 4 automated machine gun turrets located on each corner, below a walkway that stretched around the upper half of the guard tower. These turrets could quickly target and take out enemy infantry, and were an early sign of GDI's transition to using more automated defense weapons. During the Second Tiberium War, GDI made use of both upgraded old systems and new systems to defend their bases. In some instances, sandbags were still used as basic barriers, but newly designed concrete walls were most commonly used by both GDI and the Brotherhood to provide passive protection for their bases. While these walls were about the same height as the ones used during the First War, GDI's Titan mech walkers could easily fire over them at enemy targets. Automated armored gates that retracted underground were usually placed at various sections of the surrounding wall, or at strategic choke points, used by friendly ground units to enter and exit the base. Searchlight towers were usually placed next to these gates. These tall, concrete structures provided elevated observation over a given area. The guards posted at the top of these towers would alert the base to any spotted enemy units. Using the spotlight, the guards would mark the enemy unit's location, so long as it stayed within the tower's sight range. Because of the Brotherhood's advances in subterranean technology, they could use vehicles such as the Devil's Tongue flame tank or subterranean APC to travel beneath walls and emerge inside a GDI base. Such an assault could destroy valuable infrastructure, or enable non-engineers to capture vital buildings. To counter this tactic, GDI made use of concrete pavement to prevent such attacks from happening, or at the very least, control where the underground vehicles emerged from. Pavement served many other purposes too. It would prevent large craters from being formed by high-explosive weapons such as Nod's cluster missiles. Wheeled vehicles, such as harvesters, would move faster along a paved surface compared to an unpaved one. Paved surfaces would even limit the spread of Tiberium, though it would not stop the veins of a veinhole monster. When it came to active defense systems, GDI utilized 3 types of automated turrets that would be placed atop a component tower. Based on a modular construction principle, the component tower served as the basis for all GDI base defenses. These towers were unique in that they could be built as either individual structures or as part of a concrete wall. The first kind of turret was the Vulcan cannon, which consisted of 2 miniguns firing 50mm projectiles at high speed. These cannons were mainly used against infantry, though could be used to a lesser effect against vehicles. To counter vehicles, the second turret, called the rocket-propelled grenade, would be used. Its explosive charge ensured splash damage to any other units around its primary target. While the turret had more range compared to the Vulcan cannon, it wasn't as accurate. Sometimes, it was unable to hit any units that were right under the turret, with the projectiles flying well over their target. The last turret type was the surface-to-air missile. This SAM turret was only used against enemy aircraft, firing multiple guided missiles in order to bring said aircraft down. In addition to the turrets, GDI, like the Brotherhood, used the electromagnetic pulse cannon. The EMP cannon could fire a high-powered blast of electromagnetic energy that renders any mechanized vehicles inoperative for a short period. Any vehicle or structure caught in the blast is disabled until the effect wears off. This includes friendly vehicles and structures, as the ball of energy had a wide blast radius. This weapon was particularly useful against the Brotherhood's cyborgs, disabling them long enough for GDI forces to destroy them without taking too many casualties in return. The EMP cannon did cost a lot of power, though not as much as GDI's ultimate defense system, called the Firestorm Generator. The Firestorm Defense Generator created an almost infinitely high, impenetrable force field. There were 2 components to this defense system. The first was the generator itself, which is identified by the heated blue energy emanating between 2 large half-spheres, with one sphere attached to a large arm and held over the other sphere. The second component was the Firestorm Walls section. Used in conjunction with the generator, these emitters were constructed in a row and control the placement of the Firestorm defense shield. These emitters can be used to encircle a base, or can be set up at key strategic positions. The Firestorm barrier had to be manually activated by the GDI commander. When activated, a superheated energy wave is emitted straight up into the sky. As previously mentioned, this wave was completely impenetrable. It could block all ballistic projectiles attempting to punch through it. Any aircraft or missiles that tried to fly through the barrier would be destroyed, as the energy wave seemed to stretch well into the troposphere. One knew when the generator was active by the blue and white glow emanating from the wall sections, as well as the bursts of energy shooting upward from the corners. Ground units could only cross the wall sections when they were offline. Any that were caught on top of the sections as they were activated would be instantly destroyed. As powerful as the Firestorm Generator was, it still had its drawbacks. The generator, combined with the wall sections, consumed a lot of power. Because of this, the generator could only be active for a short time before it had to be deactivated. The commander could turn the shield on and off at will, but it would automatically turn off when it ran out of power and needed to recharge. I also imagine that the amount of heat emitted when it's active put strain on both the generator and wall sections. While deactivated, enemy units could target and destroy the wall sections, creating a gap for them to move through. The generator couldn't stop subterranean assaults, proven when the Brotherhood infiltrated Hammerfest's base from underground, allowing their forces to capture the base and the Firestorm Generator located there. This is why it was essential for GDI commanders to place pavement within their bases as protection from such attacks. During Cabal's Cyborg Rebellion, the Rogue AI was able to acquire the schematics of GDI's Firestorm Generator and use it to protect his core from the attacking GDI and Nod forces. It seemed that Cabal had made improvements to the generator, as it stayed activated continuously while under his control. Nod and GDI were only able to shut it down by capturing 3 control nodes in the region. Overall, the cost to maintain and operate the Firestorm Generator was just too much. Due to GDI's military cutbacks in the interim years between the Second and Third Tiberium Wars, the generator was retired from the organization's arsenal, though perhaps not entirely. During Kane's assault to retrieve the Tacitus from GDI's Rocky Mountain Research Facility in 2052, the Brotherhood's forces saw that the facility was guarded by 2 impenetrable red energy barriers that stretched high into the sky. The only way to shut down these barriers was for Nod to capture nearby communication centers so they could hack the GDI network. The outer energy barrier was the first to be brought down, letting Nod forces assault GDI's main base. The inner barrier protecting the facility that housed the Tacitus was shut down a short time later, which allowed a Nod saboteur to infiltrate the facility and reclaim the Tacitus. So it seems that GDI still made limited use of the Firestorm Generator, or at least a modified version of it, to protect highly important bases and research facilities, even after the Third Tiberium War. As for the Third War itself, GDI didn't utilize concrete walls or pavement during frontline operations. This may have been due to commanders relying more heavily on their MCVs to move across the battlefield, in order to find and gain access to new Tiberium fields quickly. Walls were now mostly used to protect permanent bases well behind the front lines, and near blue zones. Blue zones made up 20% of the Earth's surface, and were largely untouched by Tiberium infestation. Large concrete walls surrounded the major cities of these blue zones, protecting those within from the mostly lawless and Tiberium-contaminated environment of the yellow zones. Out in the yellow zones, one can find the remnants of abandoned GDI bases from the Second War, including some still-standing concrete walls and searchlight towers. Some searchlight towers were still used as garrisonable structures by GDI, such as at the Battle for the Pentagon. These towers had to be used after GDI lost power to their new primary defensive turret, called the Watchtower. The Watchtower stands 30 feet tall with twin 20mm railguns mounted atop it. Equipped with an IR spotlight and next-gen sensor to detect stealth units, this anti-infantry defense tears enemy infantry to shreds. Programmed to attack any ground unit that comes within its range, the Watchtower is also able to distinguish between infantry and tanks, and will prioritize the infantry over tanks so as to maximize the lethality of its anti-personnel ammunition. The Watchtower was cheap and quick to construct, and didn't use up too much power. While it was lethal against infantry, it was far less effective against vehicles, unless a commander purchased AP ammunition from the command post, which would be delivered in crates on a small pad sitting next to the structure. The boxes of AP ammo would be mounted at the top of the Watchtower, next to each barrel. The barrels themselves would attain some kind of cover, too. With AP ammo, the Watchtower did noticeably more damage to vehicles, and was even able to effectively destroy light ones, such as Nod's attack bikes and buggies. Overall though, the Watchtower couldn't hold up long against tanks or explosive rounds. In order to protect their frontline bases from enemy vehicles, GDI commanders had Guardian cannons. The Guardian cannon was equipped with a 105mm gun capable of cutting through the heavy armor of tanks. In addition to acting as GDI's primary AT defense turret, 2 Guardian cannons were mounted onto the battle base, which was the deployed version of the rig vehicular unit. Just like the Watchtower, the Guardian cannon could detect stealth units nearby, and have its 105mm gun upgraded to a railgun. Railguns were the best in GDI's arsenal, able to rip through infantry and most armored vehicles with ease. A commander would acquire these weapons from a technology center, and they would show up as a prong-shaped statue in one of the pods next to the structure. The anti-air battery was used by GDI to defend their bases from hostile aircraft. It could detect stealthed aircraft, and the turret was armed with twin 30mm Gatling guns, which fired depleted uranium shells. The pods of ammunition can be seen mounted on each side of the battery's Gatling guns. The AA battery had a deadly accurate fire control system and a staggering rate of fire, making it capable of quickly downing light aircraft such as Nod's Venoms or the Skrin's Storm Riders. Better armored aircraft like Nod's vertical bombers and the Skrin's planetary assault carriers were not as easily destroyed. For dealing with these heavier aircraft, GDI commanders would acquire tungsten shells from a technology center, which would show up in one of the center's pods as a sensor module of some kind. On the AA battery itself, the round-shaped ammo pods would be replaced with larger box-shaped ones. The size of the Gatling barrels increased, and the base of the turret was widened. The tungsten shells had increased penetrative power, which let the AA batteries bring down heavier aircraft. They were also capable of quickly penetrating the shields of Skrin aircraft. Outside these standard base defenses, GDI riflemen were equipped with entrenching shovels to dig and set up foxholes. These garrisonable dwellings provided protection from light arms weapons. Up to 2 squads of infantry could garrison the foxhole. Unlike base defense turrets, foxholes could not be repaired and would not last long against explosive weapons like grenades, rockets, and tank shells. In addition, they needed no power to function, and could be set up almost anywhere, including right outside an enemy base. However, Nod flame weapons could quickly clear out the garrisoned infantry. Improvements in sonic technology grew exponentially with GDI's focus on Tiberium abatement after the Second War. Using data deciphered from the Tacitus, GDI discovered the resonance frequency of Tiberium, enabling the organization to develop a few unique inventions that could reduce, or even halt, the spread of Tiberium. One of these inventions was the sonic repulsion field. Sonic repulsion fields were initially used to contain deposits of Tiberium that sprang up in the middle of blue zones. However, GDI later realized that these barriers could be set up around their most vital base structures to prevent them from being captured by enemy engineers, or to prevent commandos from planting explosives on the buildings and destroying them. Sonic barriers could even reduce the damage the structures they surrounded received from hostile attacks. The other invention was the sonic emitter. The sonic emitter was designed to halt the spread of Tiberium by launching a sonic wave at the crystals, breaking them apart. During the Skrin's invasion, GDI quickly realized that sonic emitters were the most effective weapons against the aliens, and incorporated them into the organization's base defenses. These weapons proved quite effective against the Brotherhood's forces too. The waves shot from the sonic emitters would move across the ground in a straight line, and tear through multiple units in a row. Like other base turrets, the emitter was equipped with sensors that allowed it to detect stealth units. As powerful as the emitter was, the emitter's attack was slow, taking precious seconds to charge up and launch follow-up waves. Fast attack vehicles, like Nod's bikes and buggies, could dodge a sonic wave, avoiding any damage from it. The weapon had a minimum attack range, and so couldn't effectively attack units that were too close to it. AA batteries, or other anti-air weapon systems, usually needed to be close to the emitters to protect them from air attacks. Despite these issues, the sonic emitters were GDI's best weapon for ground defense. Ever since the formation of the Global Defense Initiative, the organization has managed to make the protection of its bases and territories a priority, as part of its attempts to maintain global stability on a changing planet. This priority has enabled GDI to withstand assaults from both the Brotherhood and Skrin during the 3 major wars across an increasingly Tiberium-afflicted Earth. Such defensive measures will likely continue to be a part of the global defense initiative against whatever enemies, both old and new, arise to challenge the organization in the future.